If you lived anywhere near Farmerton in the mid-1960s, you could well be forgiven for thinking that the wheels were beginning to come off your world. In the hills behind you, there's a secret, sinister something being built by men who claim to be from the waterboard. The local planning officer has just dropped dead, and you've got a young and rather smarmy GP to replace the old quack who's just been murdered. Still, weather looks like it's clearing up. Welcome to our 400 square foot model we're building here at the Bluebell Railway. Right now we are talking about bridges and viaducts. Have a look at this. Isn't that something very, very impressive? I love it. Trains going over viaducts, brilliant. Alright, we based our viaduct on the design of the Mooreswater Viaduct in Cornwall. And here's a copy of the plan. Now we've shrunk this down to 1/76 scale, which is prototypically right, 4mm to the foot. But here's the problem. If I was to put this in here, where our viaduct is, the first thing you notice is it's much, much too big. Because if we carried on in this scale, it would have been all the way down the layout. So obviously we used a little bit of artistic license to shrink it all up a bit. Now it looks like a very complicated thing to build, but in actual fact, it's very, very simple. The main structure is made of 3x1 timbers, they're the uprights, and across the top is 9mm MDF. Then you've got the arches here. How do we make those? Very, very simple. What you've got here is 2 or 3mm MDF, and look how bendy that is. So what you do is, you've got your two uprights, and you literally just take a piece of MDF, bend it around to the section, cut it, put it into place. Oh, Bob's your uncle, nothing could be simpler. If you have a look here, we've got details like this. Now this is what is known as a refuge. And what they do is people hide in them if the train's coming. So how do we make the refuges? Again, very, very simple thing. All we did is we took very thin MDF, 2mm MDF, just made it a U section like that. And then what we're going to do is to chop it up into little sections. And basically, once you've got those, you can just pop them onto the bridge like that. There you go. The piece underneath is just a solid piece of timber. Now, it also looks like it's made of brick and stone, but of course it's not. What we've used is our old friend, plastic embossed sheet, which is this chappy here. The good thing about the plastic sheet is it's so bendy. Look how flexible that stuff is. Have a look at this. This is the finishing stonework on the arch there. This would have included the keystone. All we did is we took the original plan, we reduced this down and then printed it onto cardboard and then carefully cut it out and then stuck it on there. Coat of grey primer and then a bit of subtle weathering and away you go. Looks very impressive. So let's have a look at tunnels now. Here's a tunnel entrance here. Let's have a look at this chappy. The front section is actually a vacuum form moulding, and what we've done to give it the effect of a tunnel that's been lined in cement, we've actually used a piece of sandpaper, just chopped it out and stuck it over the side there. Brilliant. Very, very effective, very quick and very easy to do. Now this is actually going to be the tunnel entrance for our canal. And you know us, if we're going to have a canal in our layout, we're going to have a canal that actually works. So we did a bit of investigating and went to look at some layouts which have done exactly that. This is David and Jackie Walker's Crumford Wharf. Right, David, tell me about Crumford Wharf.
Well, Crumford Wharf is actually in Derbyshire. It was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, and it's a World Heritage Site now.
So this place really exists?
This place really exists.
So tell me how you came to discover this wonderful site.
Simply by taking the dog for a walk one day. I'd seen the signs for High Peak Junction, parked up and walked over the swing bridge that you just opened. There was the scene before me. After the curiosity set in about actually creating it as a model, the first thing we got was Ordnance Survey maps of the period, which we wanted for the 1920s. Armed with a map, it tells you where the track was and it gives you something to work from.
Lots of things going on this layout. We've got the roadway here. Now what's this road?
Well, this road is actually the main Derby to Manchester A6 trunk road.
And you decided to make it work. Now how did you do that?
It was Jackie's insistence, because she looked at layouts at exhibitions and said, why can't the cars work? And it's literally a 3-car battery mechanism with a little model van body glued to the top of it.
Here he goes. So that's Jones the Butcher, and he's off down to Derby now, isn't he?
Which is about 15 miles that way.
Now, on our layout, we're going to have some canals, and you've managed to crack the canal thing. How did you get your canal boat to work?
The first version of the canal we tried actually had the boats floating in a tank of water.
So all the canal would have actually had water in it?
Yeah.
That's pretty mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a brave stuff.
Completely
And
mad.
did it work?
No.
It didn't.
Quite simply, they run on wheels, scale-electric wheels,
Right.
with 4 AA batteries and a little motor and gearbox.
So that's it, and it just sits in the group. A bit like scale electric.
A bit like a scale-electric, but it's self-powered.
It's very effective, isn't it? So now you've got a lower level of track down there, David. What's all that about?
Yeah, the track is actually super elevated round the curve, where the track is banked up slightly to give the locomotives and carriages a smoother run through the curves. What I do when I build the locomotive is I actually put a fully sprung chassis on it, so all the wheels can move and float with the track. All the track work on here is all handmade.
So what are these chaps here? Because they're quite interesting bits. They look like tenders to me.
They're old locomotive tenders. They were converted into water carrying tanks. The main reason being, there was here until the 1960s, and there was no mains water supply. So they had to get water up to the higher levels of the railway to supply the locomotives with water and to supply drinking water. Well, this is the main railway workshops, but they used to do the running repairs for the railway, for the incline, and for the water tanks and things like that.
So Dave, can you show us how the incline works, please?
Certainly.
Let's have a look. In you go.
And with my trusty controller.
Off she goes. So that's pulling up the empty trucks.
A few moments later, it meets the balancing load coming back down.
So these were balanced together. They used each other as a counterweight.
They use each other
Things
as a counterbalance.
Tell you what, while we're around here, it gives us a chance to have a look at some of the rolling stock and all the other gizmos at the back. Hello, this is Jackie, this is Dave's wife. Now, how did you get involved in all this malarkey?
Well, basically, I was daft enough to marry him. Dave's favourite loco, the North London tank. I spent my honeymoon crawling all over it. I'm feeling like a total prat, to be perfectly honest. But then I spent the evenings watching him create this incredible piece of engineering. And I just said, please, can I have a go?
How much rolling stock have you got?
There must be 30 or so coaches, probably 20 locos, and about 150 wagons altogether now.
You're starting to build your own little section now, aren't you?
I am, yes. I'm going to move up further up the incline, and I'm building my own individual layout now, yes.
Right, well here's our canal, and basically what you're looking at here is the foundation work for our canal system. Now to get the water effect, we're going to use layers and layers of varnish to build up a nice ripply water effect. Because our layout is so much lower than theirs, we can't really use the slot cast system because you'd see the slot in the canal there. It looked very obvious and a bit goofy. So we're going to plan B. Now this is where I'm going to introduce Chris. He's the head of our research and development for canals department. Chris, could you send round our first example of what we're going to do here, please?
Certainly.
Now, the more observant of you will notice a deliberate mistake as it comes around the corner here. Look at this. I know what you're thinking. It's not a canal boat. It's a lorry, and it's also doing 150 miles an hour. Now, obviously, that's incorrect. It's basically the fallow road system. What we're going to do now is have a look at the fallow road system in full swing. So how does it work? What is the magic behind the system? Well, it's very, very clever indeed. Each vehicle has rechargeable batteries in it. This is a bus and it's got 2 batteries. These are the batteries here, and they supply power to the tiny little motor at the back. Now the motor has a worm drive which connects and transmits power to the back wheels here. So that's how the back wheels work. That's how it gets its power. But how does it steer? Well, that's very clever. You can see on this truck here, if I turn it over, the wheels, the front wheels, actually turn. Now they're guided on the other side by a tiny, tiny magnet. And the magnet follows a wire that's set into the road. Now, this is the wire here, and it's an iron wire. And what we've got to actually do is to set it into the road, recess it into the road, and there's a special bit of kit for doing that. This chappy here. What it is, it's like a miniature router. Pop him in there, and you just draw along where you want it to be. There you go, drawing. Just going to do a little bit, just to show you, it's very, very easy. I'm going to do a little bit of a curve on it as well, there you go. That's enough for demonstration purposes. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it into the little groove now. There it is now. It's a bit fiddly. What you want to do is just push it in. There you go, it's that easy. press it down a bit. Now watch what happens when I put the truck on it. Have a look at the steering mechanism. Now watch what happens. See, instantly it grabs it, and wherever I turn the truck, the wheels will follow the road. See? There you go. If I start it up, isn't that brilliant? It's fantastic. But of course, the problem is it's running at 150 miles an hour. So our next problem is, how do we slow it down to go at the correct speed, which is about 4 miles an hour, for a canal boat? So Chris has come up with this latest development. This looks like something out of Wacky Races. Chris, tell me about this wonderful device you've got here.
Well, I decided that the motor in the bus wasn't really practical to be geared down sufficiently to give a prototype speed, which is about 4 miles an hour on a real narrowboat. So I've developed this unit. I've used a motor out of an old printer that was battery powered, connected to a PC, and I found that the batteries, there were 4 cells making 4.8 volts, but the motor ran quite happily on 1 cell but at reduced speed. So I used a worm drive, very much the same as the bus, but I've added a 4-to-1 reduction in spur gears on the end of that to drive the rear wheels. I cheated a little bit. I used the steering mechanism out of the bus for quickness and ease of getting it to work. And this fits within the prototype narrowboat body that we've got. Hopefully we'll be building some better ones a bit later on and using a similar principle, but this proves the system actually works.
Here she comes. There you go. And that's brilliant. It's exactly the right pace. It's about 4 miles an hour, trundling gracefully round. Just misses the bank there. That's very, very good. There you go. Now when it's finished, this is going to have a few swans on it, a couple of other boats going up and down, and of course the lovely finished varnish water effect. And I think that is an absolutely blinding result. Now obviously all the countryside that she's trundling through at the moment is going to be improved, and of course we're going to have our working road up here, and this is going to be populated with bushes and trees and picnickers, maybe some people fishing. And here's Rosie's cottage, of course. She lives in a very idyllic spot overlooking the canal and the narrow gauge railway, very near the tin mine. Unfortunately for her, that was new when she moved in, pushed the house prices right down, but generally a lovely, lovely aspect indeed. Welcome back. As lovely as it is to have the canals up and running, none of this will be much interest to Sid Plummet, the sole witness to the murder of GP Dr. Wade. Too scared to go to the police and terrified out of his mind after the firebombing of his house, he has decided to take up refuge here in the ruins of Fairweather Castle. And here she is, here's her castle. Now the first thing we had to do was to set it into the landscape, because this is a rolling hill. So what we did is we made a sort of shelf for it using 9mm MDF and a wooden bracket which we've screwed to the baseboard. Now Fairweather Castle itself comes as a kit. Here's the box here. Look at this. Now it all looks very promising when you see the pictures, but actually the interesting thing is it's made out of this stuff, which is a styrene, closed-cell styrene foam. Now it's quite a nice thing to model with, but you have to be very, very careful what you use to stick it together, because if you use any of the solvent glues or super glues, it tends to dissolve it. What we found works really well is PVA glue. The only thing is it does take a little while to set, so you need some tape just to hold the joins together. Now that's all very nice, and we've given it a lick of paint and weathered it, but what really interests us is the fact that Sid's life is just about to get a whole lot worse. As if Sid hasn't got enough to worry about, Fairweather Castle is haunted. Let me show you. This is the ghost of John Fairweather, 3rd Duke of Farmerton. Now the 3rd Duke achieved some notoriety in the 14th century when he proclaimed teeth to be the work of the devil and insisted that the firstborn of every family had them removed, which probably explains the popularity of soup and porridge in the area. So how do we make our ghost? Well, I will show you. First thing I'm going to do is turn it off so I don't blow it up. I'll take the thing. Now, I'm going to take our castle off to reveal a sort of Nelson's column affair. I made the Nelson's column the same height as the bottom of the window. And there's our little figure. Actually, this is a little old lady in this sort of pose. I don't know why she was in that sort of pose. Maybe she's being mugged, or perhaps she's having a heart attack. Anyway, to make her look a little bit less like an old lady with a hat on, we sort of filed the hat down and gave her a coat of white primer. And we're lighting it with an LED, which is this chap here, which I've carefully concealed under there. that goes through a little hole to uplighter, but they're light emitting diodes. The thing about them is they're very bright and they last for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. You do have to be a little bit careful with them. There is a right way and a wrong way to connect them up. There is sort of a plus and a minus, or an anode and a cathode, and you do need to put a resistor in series with them, because if they get too much current, they will go pop. LEDs come in a variety of shapes, sizes and colours. Some even have resistors built into them, so if you're not sure what you're doing, ask the chap in the shop, who'll probably help you. If you can wire up a plug, you can do this. It's not difficult at all. The world of LEDs is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Embrace that world. Welcome aboard. Let's pop this back and continue to terrify the living daylights out of our hero, Sid Plummet. In addition to running a rather fine collection of full-size rolling stock, London Underground also have their very own model layout. It's used as a training aid, and instructors find it extremely effective for teaching signalling and train protocol. Tom Carter, former driver and now instructor, rather rashly agreed to let me loose on the controls. So Tom, I am your rookie signalman, you're going to be my train driver, and we're taking a train from Northtown, which is this station here, all the way round to Southside, which is this station over here. Yep. So what I've got in front of me is this big panel with lots of lights and numbers on it. I'm guessing, but I've got a line here which has got orange and green, which is my southbound.
That's your southbound
and there's
road.
Another line here which is blue and yellow, and that presumably obviously is my my northbound. Now I've got lots of lights, lots of numbers. How do I get started?
Okay, so what we're looking at here for you as a signal operator is your signal control diagram. And it's replicating all the little signalling sections we've got throughout the track here. So from little black line to black line is a signalling section. The lights within here replicate what's being occupied on that section of track at the moment. At the moment you can see we've only got 2 sets of lights on, replicating the train in the platform.
All right, so let's assume that I'm happy with that. I've set it all up so that I'm going to trundle all the way down there and round. Okay. It's up to you now to go, isn't it?
And not until I get a green signal operator.
Oh yeah, of course. All right, then how do I do a green signal? ZB42, that's this chap here. I'm going to press it down.
And there we had the points all have to move, and then
off you
departing,
go.
hopefully.
There she goes. All right, now you've stopped at the station. Now, how did you know when to start applying the brakes?
You'll learn that through your route training. And again, if weather conditions are different, you know, it's icy or rainy, then you might need to apply the brakes a little bit earlier. But you'll have your instructor operator with you for a certain amount of time before you let loose on the line on your own. So, Tom, you have got a green light, and I command you to take this train to Lambeth North. And off she goes. As I leave the platform, obviously the red lights come on, and that means that nothing following me can plough into the back of me, doesn't it? Yeah, that's right.
There's a sort of safety system in there.
That's right.
Now you're driving right through Lambeth North. What's going on? Oh, I know why. There's a whole bunch of Man United supporters, and no one wants to pick them up. Let's face it. So now it's coming into this section here, which is the next control panel. Oh, good heavens! Look at this. It's all yellow lights. This is totally different to the other one. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, this one we've got the yellow lights to show all the track circuits live and active. If a train's in that area, then the lights will go out, and we just call that the tracks down, so it identifies the train as track lights out rather than lights on.
So it's the opposite to the other one.
Yep, that's it.
And hang on, it's ground to halt. Oh, we've got a red light on C22 now. Why have we got a red light there? What's going on here?
It stops this area because we've got some points ahead, and we've got a train here, as you can see, in what's known as a siding in the middle there. So while that train was being routed into the siding, we had to stop this train in advance of those points.
So are there many of these sidings scattered throughout the system then?
For instance, the Northern Line has about 15 different reversing points that train operators have to line when they're out there.
That's a lot. I didn't realise there were so many of them. Now, we want to continue round. I've got a red light at the moment. C22, I think is set against me. Is that right? C22. South home to platform 2. And south home to platform 2, that's where I want to go. So if I fire her up, you now have a green light. Take it away, please, Tom. These people are getting really annoyed because they're going to be late home for their supper. To Wood Lane we shall go, which is actually off my control panel, so I've got to leg it over here to this control panel where it's coming into my section. So Tom, what happens if you wanted to try and go through a red signal, if you were just maliciously trying to go through one, what would happen?
Well, there's safety equipment on your train, and if you went through it would operate the equipment on the train would come to an immediate halt.
Let's put her to bed for the night. So Tom, one thing I've always wondered about, what happens if this thing breaks down in the middle of a tunnel?
Well, the train operator's got to identify the defects and get the train moving.
You have to know a lot of stuff, don't you? You have to know your route, you have to know about weather conditions, about signalling, and you have to know how to mend them.
Yeah, it's day in, day out. It's a pretty ordinary job, mundane, because things don't often go wrong. But when it does, yeah, you've got to have that knowledge on board to just pull it out of the bag.
Having created our ghost effect, we're going to have a go at another lighting technique now. We are going to enter the mysterious and twilight world of fibre optic cables. Our little chap here is going to be holding a torch and we want it to light up. Now, we can't use LEDs or grain of wheat bulbs because they're too big for the job. And this is where fibre optic cables come into their own. Now, here's a piece of fibre optic cable. And as you can see, it's very, very flexible. Essentially, the light is carried through the cable on these fibres here. What you do is you bung a light source through one end and hopefully it pitches up at the other. Now, what I've done is cut half the fibres away at this end and added a little bit of super glue and painted it black, being very careful not to cover the other end where the light comes out. What I've done is run the fibre optic cable underneath the layout, drilled through the baseboard and up through the harbour master's office, which is here. This is our little harbour scene. And if I pop the top off here, you can see what I've done. This is the fibre optic cable coming up here. And what I've done is just drilled through these two sections here, just to give it a bit of support. And then it comes out just underneath our little mate's hand, just there. Let's just pop our harbour master's office back down there. There you go. Now, the other end of the fibre optic cable is held up against a white LED. Now, I'll show you what it's like when you spark it up. Alan, can you spark it up for us, please? He's under there somewhere. There you go. A tiny, brilliant white light source. Now, this is what fibre optics are really, really good at. You can probably get 4 or 5 fibre optic cables in that one LED. And if you're using an incandescent light source, you might be able to get 20 or so. And you can distribute them right throughout the layout. And they're brilliant at doing tiny, tiny light sources in very difficult to get at places. We're not the only people to have noticed Nobby here signalling away. He has also been spotted by Sid Plummet, who is doing his utmost to avoid the ghost up there at the castle. What he can see from his lofty perch is that our little friend here is actually signalling away to a mysterious ship laying just offshore. That's right, yeah, it's not right. It's not right. There is something very dodgy going on.